Well, hello and welcome to the webcast. The topic of today is chatting up Chat GPT. And I mean, there's so much about AI that there's no humanly possible way to cover it all in a mere hour. So we're going to focus on Chat GPT, assuming I can get my slides to work. There we go. What are we going to explore? Well, what is Chat GPT? How does it compare to other AIs or large language models? What are its quirks, foibles, strengths, limitations? What the frack is a prompt anyway? And of course, what a lot of people want to know is tips for making good prompts. We're also going to do some common use cases and demos. And I will be sharing some resources so that you can further your own education about large language models on your own time. So why should you care what I say? Well, okay, I am Bronwen Aker, also known as Corvus, and in some circles known as the Cybrarian. I did development for a while, and it's a little bit of web, a little desktop, some mobile. And I also at one point made my living as a technical trainer. So this is not my first rodeo as far as trying to share information with other people. It's actually empowering others is one of the things that I enjoy most in this life. I switched to cybersecurity in 2017, and since 2018, I have had the honor and privilege to be a technical editor for Black Hills Information Security. Now, the bottom line, I am a geek. I've been around. I've seen a lot of natural fertilizer, and I hope that you will enjoy my perspective on what we've got going on today. Now, full disclosure, this presentation was made using ChatGPT and other generative AI. However, they were at all times under adult supervision. Now, that's of course assuming that you consider me to be an adult. Some people will say yes, others maybe not so much. So what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a general purpose chatbot. It's also an updated interface for accessing large data sets. Some people say it's the pinnacle of AI advancement, a threat to critical thinking, a digital demigod, a deceptive manipulator, and a harbinger of AI dystopia. I'm not so sure about those last few, but there's a lot of hype out there, good, bad, and otherwise. Don't believe everything you hear or read. So let's take a little more serious tack on it, on what ChatGPT is. It's a large language model and it's supporting technology. It's a text-based tool. So unlike Midjourney or DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, all ChatGPT deals with is text. And the cool thing about it is it lets you ask questions like you would ask them of a human being. So if you've ever done work with databases, you have to learn the language of the database in order to communicate with it. With ChatGPT and other large language models, you don't have to do that. You can talk to it as if it was a person, either through typing or through the spoken word. ChatGPT was the first publicly accessible large language model. And again, it can process and respond to complex, nuanced questions. So what the heck is a large language model? Well, I went to three of my favorites and I asked them. ChatGPT says that a large language model is an advanced AI model designed to understand and generate human language, blah, blah, blah. Copilot says a type of artificial intelligent model that's trained on vast amount of data and can generate human-like text, etc. Claude, it's not much better. Basically, if you ask any LLM what they are, you're going to get a ton of word salad. So let me distill this down for you. A large language model is an AI system created to perform complex language tasks with high fluency. They're trained on huge data sets, and I mean massive, billions, billions and billions of data points. Some of the models will have as few as 2 billion, but other ones will have tens of billions of data points. And it's amazing that these will fit into just a small amount of gigabytes, comparatively speaking. It's truly a phenomenal innovation, and it is wonderful, but it also is new technology, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Now, the main thing about the large language models is that they're transforming how we interact with technology. And that's a key thing that I want you to understand. We've had the ability to collect and interact with data for decades, but this is making it easier than ever before to perform that extraction process. And again, we're going to talk about it a lot. So the Chat GPT timeline. Chat GPT was released to the public crazy. It's amazing. By February of 2023, Copilot was launched leveraging the ChatGPT technology. And this integration, this implementation is part of a $10 billion investment that Microsoft has made in OpenAI and in this large language model technology. So specializations.
Hey, Bronwen.
Yeah.
Hey, we keep losing you from time to time. And
yeah, let me see. The satellites are being unkind today.
yeah, I just think it's ChatGPT is mad that you're talking about it.
No, I mean it's not, but
All
right.
right.
So how much did we lose? Did I get to the Microsoft part?
Yeah, just a little bit in and out. So what I'm gonna do is let everyone know right now that Brahman's gonna go in and out a little bit. And so if there's a large outage, then I'll pop back in. Okay.
Awesome.
So, right.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I have a satellite internet and I'm in a remote location, not totally under a rock, but mostly under a rock. So my apologies. Anyway, so February 2023, Copilot launched. It's leveraging OpenAI technology. And again, huge investment in OpenAI and ChatGPT. When you're using Copilot, you are using that technology, but within the Microsoft ecosystem with additional Microsoft guardrails and other UI tweaking and customization. There we go. Now, you may or may not have heard that last month, Apple announced that they are also forming a partnership with OpenAI, and soon ChatGPT will be integrated with all the iOSs, iOS on your mobile devices, iPadOS, and macOS. So more stuff coming soon. And yes, Siri will be able to tap into ChatGPT to tell you bedtime stories, dad jokes, and so on and so forth. ChatGPT is not the only game in town. There are a lot of other options out there. Claude by Anthropic, recognized for its focus on safety and interpretability. That's definitely a mouthful for polysyllables. Palm by Google. You've got Llama by Meta, Grok by X or whatever they're calling themselves these days, and Ernie, which is Baidu, which is used primarily in China, where we've had a lot of issues with English-based LLMs not dealing with Asian character sets properly, and so anyway, they have one that more actively supports that population. And this, I do not expect you to be able to read this slide in detail, but it is in the slide deck, and I encourage you to download it. This is a tiny fraction of all of the LLMs that are out there, who they're made by, what their use cases are, and so on. And actually, this data is a couple of months old. So if things have changed, the landscape is changing so rapidly, so rapidly. Don't harsh on me for being inaccurate, because this was accurate at the time, but it just, no, you talk about a moving target. It's amazing. So what's an AI? An AI, according to my favorite LLMs, is a branch of computer science focused on creating systems capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence, blah, blah, blah. A branch of computer science that aims to create systems capable of performing tasks that would normally require human intelligence, and so on. Computer systems, okay, we get the idea. What's the common denominator here? Human intelligence. Human intelligence. Human intelligence. We've had various kinds of AIs around for a long time, and LLMs and the other generative AIs that we have are simply taking these technologies to a higher level. And to see how it all fits together, I put this graph together so that you can see it. Machine learning, just to get an idea, is where computers learn from and learn how to make decisions based on data. And when I first gave this talk, I actually had AI and machine learning reversed. And then I got to talking with a coworker at the HIS who has a doctorate in data science. And we hashed it out. It's like, no, machine learning is a superset. And then you get into AI, which is where you've got those predictions and that striving to take all of this machine learning and use it to have that human-like interaction. And then you've got the deep learning, which is, it's using neural networks with lots and lots of layers to analyze and learn from these large amounts of data. So LLMs are a subset of all of this stuff going on, where it's taking deep learning and is using that to make it easier for us to interact with data because of how the data is being connected under the covers. So this all is to mimic how the most sophisticated computing device available is here between your ears. All right. Some of the characteristics. LLMs are good at some stuff and not so good at others. What are they good at? They're good at natural language processing, creating conversational agents, information retrieval, educational training, research and analysis, and they're easily personalized. They're not so good at understanding anything. No, you don't need to worry about Skynet yet, okay? Chill. So they're not actually intelligent. They have no intuition, they have no sense, they have no emotions. They also have issues with accuracy and reliability. Now, this is getting better, but right now, they don't grok facts. So, for example, a large language model doesn't know that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius. So if its data says that water freezes at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, 14.4 degrees Celsius, that's all it knows. It's not going to know any difference. They also don't do anything creative. And you're probably going to go, wait a minute, I've seen Midjourney images and they're pretty creative. No. They're rehashes of data that they have in their data set. You will never, ever, ever, ever never have a large language model write The sun also rises, or Left Hand of Darkness, or Time Enough for Love. They're not going to be able to do that. But you can say, okay, I want you to write me a haiku, or I want you to write me blah, blah, blah in the style of Heinlein, or in the style of Stephen King, or in the style of name your favorite author. It can rehash known textual data. And your image generators, they're doing the same thing. So if you go to Midjourney or DALL-E and you say, I want a picture of Yoda in the style of Klimt, well, it knows what Yoda looks like, and it knows what a Klimt painting looks like, and it's going to do a mashup of those two. It's not original. It's not creative. So let's take it to the next step. How do we interact with large language models? We do that with prompts. They reply with responses. So to kind of help provide context for this, when you're working with your typical computer system, you're interacting with a GUI that is using what is called the WIMP interface. I didn't make this up. Don't shoot me. WIMP stands for Windows, icons, menus, and pointers. And the WIMP interface is used on every GUI operating system around there. Now, when we operate with a mobile device or a tablet, we have touch screens and we're using gestures or interacting with a stylus. When we're talking about large language models, the way that we interact with them is prompts. And a prompt is text or spoken words. That's how we provide them with instructions. Now, a prompt can be simple, complex, conversational. Also, large language models can take a file upload as part of a prompt. The best prompts are always going to include context. And this is where you need to start thinking of LLMs as idiot savants or teenagers. You have to give them very precise instructions and expect they're going to do exactly what you told them to do, not what you want them to do. Very different thing. So for the purposes of this discussion, the types of prompts that I'm going to share with you. The first one is a simple query. This is where you're basically using an LLM like it's an advanced Google search. Then you can do a detailed instruction. You're giving it a little more information, a little more specific detail about how you want it to provide the output. The real core, though, is going to be either in your contextual prompt, and I'm going to break down exactly what that entails, because that's where you're getting very specific, very precise, and that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. The other kind of prompt that is going to be useful, especially if you are learning something new. I know a lot of people in the room are self-teachers. You see something, you want to know about it, and you go out and you learn it on your own, and then maybe you'll go and you'll take a class afterwards to fill in gaps. Conversational prompts are wonderful, fabulous for learning new things on your own for a whole bunch of reasons that, again, I'll get into. So, simple query. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Simple question. The advantage of a simple query like that is that it's like a search engine query, but usually you're going to get more relevant results. It's good for quick and dirty stuff, quick and dirty questions, quick and dirty tasks. The disadvantage is that the lack of context means that you may go down the wrong rabbit hole. For example, when I was preparing the first version of this talk, using a lot of different LLMs and seeing where they were similar and where they were different. And when I asked Copilot about LLMs, about 50% of the time, the responses I got had to do with something in the legal field. Apparently, the acronym LLM is overloaded. And depending on what context you're in, if you're in the legal field, it means one thing. If you're in the computing field, it means something else. And ChatGPT always went to the whole digital thing, but Copilot, because of the differences in how Microsoft has structured its interactions, it pulled in legal stuff about 50% of the time. So again, a simple query can be very good, get you an answer very quickly, but it can also send you in the wrong direction. Now, a detailed instruction is more involved. In this case, hey, I need a Python script to sort internet domains, first by top level, then by the domain itself, and then by subdomains. And then I'm giving it an example. So I'm giving it more stuff to chew on. And this detailed instruction can also go into what kind of output you want. Maybe one or more steps. This is where you're going to get a more refined, more reliable result. But this is the goal, a contextual prompt. Now, please notice at the bottom of the slide, I do have the URL for the page where I got this graphic. It's from Microsoft. I know a lot of people like to hate on Microsoft, but the page talking about prompt engineering is excellent, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. So the first thing that you got to understand, it's more complex, but you're going to get much better results. On the image, it says instructions, but this is what I call defining the persona. Who are you for the purposes of this interaction? This is me telling the LLM what persona I want it to adopt. Then provide information that is related to the task or the subject that we're going to be discussing. Next, you want to give the LLM examples that it can emulate. And if you can give it 1, 2, maybe 3, that's going to provide it something that it can use so that it can give you what you want. And then finally, once you've done that setting of the stage, then you can go and ask the question and really get down to business. I guarantee if you do this, the results that you get are going to be much more valuable, much more meaningful, much more relevant. And also it's excellent for doing repetitive tasks at scale. Brief story, I maintain a website for a nonprofit organization, and I had a page that had a glossary of terms. And then in another article, I wanted to be able to point specifically to a specific term and link to it. In the olden days, you'd use a named anchor. Now you're able to use the ID. But yeah, the website used WordPress, and every time I tried to the code, WordPress went, yeah, I don't like that, and it would break my code. So I went to ChatGPT I beat on out how to get it to wanted it to do without breaking the code. And then I'm sitting going, I have 50 terms I need to do this for. That's going to be a pain in the tuchus. So I did this. I went through, I talked to ChatGPT, and then gave it the instruction, showed it, this is what you're going to get, and this is what I want it to look like, and you're going to pull this from that, and boom, Bob's your uncle. I was able to copy paste the code into WordPress, and it worked beautifully. That's just one real life example. I'm sure that you will find your own. So in terms of the categories is a conversational prompt. And let's see, I'm getting an alert that the connection is unstable. So I'm going to talk a little bit. So the conversational prompt is where you're having a conversation. And like I said, it's like chatting with a friend or a coworker. And the thing that is wonderful about a conversational prompt, is great for brainstorming, refining ideas. It can be iterative. Yes, you can go down rabbit holes, but you can also help refine what it is that you're thinking or what it is you're talking about. because the conversation evolves with each interaction in very much a similar way as it would if you were talking with another person. The thing, though, that is wonderful about using an LLM like this is that LLMs are non-judgmental. Now, I admit I am a stone cold genius. I have lots of ways that I can verify that, but I walk into a lot of rooms, especially since getting into cybersecurity, and I feel like the dumbest person in the room. And also, after decades of working in information technology, I know for a fact that there are people in IT that if you ask a question, you lose credibility. You are immediately dismissed as being somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. And it can be harsh, especially as a woman in IT. And so there are times where I want to know something and I do not want to ask one of these other people that I know and respect because I don't want to look like an idiot to them. I want to always present my best face. And by using an LLM to ask these questions, I don't have to worry about it losing confidence in my ability because it is there to help me. So I encourage you, especially if you're new to cybersecurity, if you're new to computing, if you want to learn something, anything, by all means, use an LLM. Please understand they do have their limitations. They can only share what they have been trained on. They can only provide information based on the data they have. But with that understanding, they can help you achieve things much with a lot less discomfort than you could otherwise. So, with all of that context established, let's go ahead and get into what you've all been waiting for. Now, the first demo that I'm going to do is for a tool created by Daniel Miesler called Fabric. And the reason I want to do this, it's an open source project, it's available on GitHub, and it is a contextual prompting master class. If you're not familiar with Daniel Miesler, if you've ever heard of these sec lists, he's the guy who got that started. So Fabric works with multiple large language models. Initially, it was OpenAI, ChatGPT API only. In order to make the most out of Fabric, you will need to have API keys. So I just want you to be aware of that going in. And these API keys will let you really have a lot of fun with it. And with that, it is demo time. So give me one moment. Well, I pull up, where's my mouse cursor? There it is. Okay, so the first demo of the day, I cheated, I recorded it so that the but the heart and soul, the gold is in what are called the patterns.
Hey, Bronwen.
Yes.
Right when you said I recorded it, there was this dramatic pause. And so if you could go back to why you recorded it.
I see
and
that.
then,
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's pause and rewind.
I mean,
So,
it was exciting. It was a cliffhanger for me. I was just sitting there like,
but wait, there's more. So I recorded the demo because sometimes the demo gods are cruel. When I gave this talk at the Layer 1 conference, we had no signal. We didn't have, the conference couldn't afford the Wi-Fi at the hotel, and my hotspot was just so weak, so I wasn't able to do any demos. And I wanted to make sure that nothing like that happened here today. So this is the GitHub repo for the Fabric framework. And the main thing that I want you to see is that it's there, it's free, it's open source, it's available. A lot of fabulous, brilliant, wonderful people are contributing to it. The heart of Fabric is the patterns. And you can use the patterns either within the Fabric that's installed on your system, or you can copy paste patterns into your large language model of choice. So there is an official pattern template. All of the patterns are markdown files. And you can see here, it's just normal. To make it a little bit easier to read, I'm going to stick with the preview. But again, it's simple markdown files. First thing that the template has you do is establish the identity. And in that official template, it's giving you examples. The next thing, what are the goals? What are the desired outcomes that we want to achieve as a result of this action? Then steps, do this, do that, contemplate your navel, sing in the key of G, whatever. And then finally, what form do you want the output to take? So to give a more practical example, we're going to look at the summarize pattern. And you're an expert content summarizer. You take content and you output it in Markdown. You're going to provide sections. The first one is a one-sentence summary. The second section is going to be main points, and the last section will be takeaways. You're only going to output this as numbered lists, not bullets. No warnings, don't repeat anything. And do not start items with the same opening words. That's the context. Now, this is an instance of WSL on my personal system, and I've got Fabric installed, so you can see the files there. And now I'm going to pull in some files. I created a series of files for demonstration purposes. And you'll be seeing these files again later on. So the first thing I want to do is have Fabric do an analysis of, we're going to use the War of the Worlds. Now, it doesn't want to do the entire 300K file, so I'm only going to do chapter 1, but that should be enough. So cat and the path to the file name, and now I'm going to pipe it into Fabric. Tell Fabric that I want it to use a specific pattern. In this case, we're just going to use the summarize pattern, the one that I just showed you a moment ago. And it's thinking happy thoughts. And the cool thing, you can do this in Linux, you can do it in PowerShell, you can do it in a variety of environments. So the one sentence summary, and then the main points, and it's using numbered bullets, the takeaways. Now, the disadvantage to Fabric compared to something like Chat GPT, Claude, or Llama is that it's fire and forget. It's a one-shot deal. But if you're looking for something to get a quick and dirty, is this something that I want to take a deeper dive into? This might be something to help you out. But if you want to have a more extensive conversation, then maybe what you want to do is take the summarize pattern, drop it into your LLM of choice, and then ones are being added every day.
So Bronwen, you were like, and then.
All right.
So some people have like,
pauses.
so some people are like, the demo gods have been appeased today, but it's not the connectivity gods have been appeased.
No, the satellite internet gods are not
Yeah.
appeased. I guess I didn't sacrifice enough cookies.
Yeah. All right. So
all right.
just
So
finalize that one thought one more time.
there we go. So the one sentence summary, the main points, it's using the numbered lists. It's a one-shot deal, however. So Fabric is only going to give you one shot. It's an ingester. And now this is a great tool if you have files, documents, something that you want to know whether it's worth reading the entire book or reading the entire article. But you can't have that ongoing conversation. And there are many, many, many patterns, lots of patterns, dozens of patterns. And so many people have contributed to this project. I've been following Daniel for a long time and seeing the evolution of this, and I was so glad when he decided to take it to being an open source project, because it is something that you can learn from. Just going and looking at all the different patterns and seeing those contextual prompts is wonderful. One of the other tools that's built into Fabric is YT. YT stands for YouTube, and you're able to use the ATI to pull the transcript from a video. And in this case, I'm piping that transcript into Fabric, telling it you're going to stream it, and the pattern you're going to use, this time we're going to use a pattern called extract wisdom. A little bit different from the summarize pattern. And so here we have the summary. That particular video is a tribute to Douglas Adams on Towel Day. And these are the ideas that were discussed during this video. And these are the insights that were shared as part of the video. And if you're ever looking for quotable quotes, Extract Wisdom has got you covered, because it will find them. And then because of how Daniel structured it, what are some habits that you can do? What are some cool facts? And what references?
Maybe I should just stay on this side.
About the YT tool, if Google messes up, if YouTube messes up on the transcript, that will show up. So I'm going to do the YT again, only this time the pattern I'm using is summarize micro. We've seen summarize, we've seen extract wisdom, and now this is summarize micro. So this is like the briefest of the brief patterns in terms of summarizing things. There's only 3 main points, only 3 takeaways. How much did I lose? Okay. All right. So that's Fabric. And let's get back to the main presentation. So a quick recap. Fabric is an ingester. It is not an LLM. So it will take input and perform actions on it, but it's a one-shot. It can do analyses, summarization, extract portions of the source content, and more. Again, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to explore it and check it out. It uses the OpenAI API by default, but you can copy paste a pattern into your LLM of choice and be able to rock and roll from there. It can be configured to use other models. The food sources, it'll take text files, Word docs, PDFs, as well as input from memory. So you can paste things into memory and feed it into Fabric, or you can pull stuff from the helper apps like YTTS and so on. And I already mentioned the copy pasting. Now, the next demo that I want to do for you is analysis of file contents using Chat GPT. This is a variation on a contextual prompt because you're using the uploaded documents as context. Instructions can be brief or specific depending on what your needs are. And LLMs, they're text-based tools. So they're really, really good at analyzing text. Summarizing, rephrasing, sorting, finding duplicates. And now it's time for a demo. Let me pull up the file. All right. So this is Chat GPT. And what I'm going to do is drag and drop files onto the web page. ChatGPT is able to take more than one file at a time. In this case, what I've done is I saved the chat from a rather long Zoom meeting. This file has 4,369 lines of text, and it was a wonderful meeting. lots of good discussion, and people shared a ton of references and links. And so what I wanted to do, and what I'm about to do, is tell ChatGPT, extract and list all the URLs in this file, remove the duplicates, sort them alphabetically, first by top level domain, then by secondary domain, and then by subdomain. Yes, I'm a little OCD. I like to have my list sorted. I also like to see the details, and this is something that has evolved in ChatGPT, where it will show you the Python code and you can see what's going on. I like it because sometimes ChatGPT and other LLMs will have bad misses. And if I'm seeing that verbose output, I can see where things went sideways sometimes. And that allows me to go back and course correct. So these, 4,369 lines of content, and it was able to extract these 61 links. Obviously, if you're copy pasting things from a web page into some other document, sometimes you wind up getting style cruft and all kinds of things. So I go back. I'm having a conversation. I want you to output the above list as markdown code. And for those of you not familiar with Markdown, it's a plain text file, but there are certain standards so that you can have things formatted. And this variation on my list, now I can copy paste into my IDE of choice, or I can add it to my GitHub repo and it will do things with it. It's the same list. It's simply being formatted in a different manner. ChatGPT is more limited in terms of the output formats. It really is limited only to a couple of them. Copilot, you can get Word documents, text files, Excel files, more things. The next demo I want to do is have it analyze a CSV data file. Now, we in security, we get a lot of concern about sensitive data. So for the purposes of this demo, I used sample data created using Mockaroo. I learned about Mockaroo when I was in the development world. If you need to test formulas or functions to make sure it's behaving and you do not want to use live data, check out Mockaroo. You will love it. So I had Mockaroo generate a file that had 1,000 records, and you can see the data structure. ID, first, last name, email, gender, IP address, and country. And again, all mock data, no humans were referenced. It's all good. Now I say to ChatGPT, analyze this file, list everyone whose country is given as Philippines, then sort by last name. Now, the first thing it does, it echoes out what I gave it, and it's importing pandas and doing all this stuff. And you can see this verbose output as it's going through and chunking through the file and the data that I've given it. And then, ta-da, we have the filtered output. And I can download this. I don't know if you can see next to where it says filtered Philippines data, and over on the side, you've got the down pointing arrow. You can download that as a text file, as a CSV. It's isolated everyone whose country was identified as the Philippines, and it sorted them by last name. Yes, you can do this with Excel. Yes, you can do this with other tools, but this was pretty easy. Now, the next demo is comparing the contents of two PDF files. And again, ChatGPT can take more than one file for a compare contrast. The last time I checked with Copilot, it could only handle one file at a time. For the purposes of this demo, I'm using two different PDFs from NIST. Now, we love NIST, but sometimes their documentation is a little dense, a little hard to deal with. So I've uploaded the two files, and I'm saying, read and ingest these two documents, summarize what they are in a single paragraph of no more than 5 sentences, and then I want you to list 10 points where they are different. So there's my summary. It's 2 different versions of the NIST cybersecurity framework. And version 1 was published in April 2018. Version 2 was published in February 2024. The differences, the publication date, the name of the framework, core functions. They added governance in version 2. And you can see going on all of these differences. So great, that's wonderful. Now, since this is Chat GPT and not Fabric, I can have that conversation. I can go in and continue getting more information about the documents I uploaded. So how is this information useful to someone who deals with GRC on a daily basis? Now, notice ChatGPT is giving me a whole bunch of things. As a matter of fact, it's going to give me 10. Why? That's the last instruction that I gave it. Remember, idiot savant. But, you know, I really don't need 10 points for this. So summarize that last assessment in a single paragraph of no more than 5 sentences. Would help if I could spell sentences correctly. All right. Much easier to deal with. Now, maybe you want all of those 10 points of differences between it and how this impacts people who are dealing with GRC all the time, but maybe not. But with the conversation, again, iterative, you can refine. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is throw a file at ChatGPT that probably doesn't have to deal with on a regular basis. So tell me what kind of file this is. Can you identify it? And it did. It figured it out. This is a PCAP file. It's a packet capture file. And ChatGPT tried to import PyShark in order to be able to analyze it, but it couldn't. PyShark was not available to ChatGPT, but that did not slow it down. It says, hey, you can download and install Wireshark. And if you do that, then here's how you can do that. And to analyze the packets, so on. So great. Using Wireshark, how would I analyze this file to return the number of SNMP version 3 handshakes that it contains? This is an excellent example of how you can use a large language model like ChatGPT to help deepen your ability to do this. Find out, I mean, yeah, you can read through the documentation, but if you have a question, you know what it is you're trying to achieve, you can phrase it in such a way that you can get an answer and rock and roll quickly. Now, one caveat on this, I've run this particular demo more than once using ChatGPT. And I have found in general that ChatGPT will give different answers each time you run a query. Copilot tends to be much more consistent. If you ask the same question 3 different times, you'll get the same answer 3 different times. If you ask the same question of ChatGPT 3 separate times, you may get 3 similar but slightly different answers. So just be aware of that. Excuse me. Now, the last demo I'm going to do is on a GPT. Now, what the heck is a GPT? A GPT is an LLM assistant that is developed by OpenAI. It's basically an agent. GPT, if you didn't know, stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Yeah, not getting anything clear from that, but whatever. The bottom line is, if you have a paid account with OpenAI, you can create a predefined agent that the context is going to be the same every time. So the personality, the output formats are already preloaded. So instead of having to copy paste a pattern in for every interaction, you just pull up the GPT and you go from there. And as you play with it, you can refine the results, fine tune it for all kinds of things. So now let's go to demo number 3. Now, this is a tool that I created for myself. And let me get to the point where the URL is. And I am sharing this with you, and I hope that you will go out and beat on it and use it. The reason I created this GPT is because in my role as a technical editor for BHIS, I read anywhere from 200 to 250 pen test reports per year. And sometimes pen testers will drop a whole bunch of CVE identifiers into a report, and I don't know off the top of my head whether those CVEs have anything to do with what else is going on in the narrative. So I made this for me so that I could make sure that what was being discussed was actually meaningful and relevant. But again, I encourage you and would love to see your feedback if you take it for a test drive. And one of the things about a GPT is that you can preload it with what they call conversation starters. And I have several of them here so that you could get started. And the first one is, tell me about CVE 2014-0160. Well, that one happens to be Heartbleed. The first section is, what is a CVE identifier, and are there any popular names? Has the media gotten a hold of it? And is it, what is it known as? This GPT works well if you only know the name, and then you can get the CVE identifier as well. What is the severity, and according to whom? Give me a description. What's going on? This is Heartbleed, a critical vulnerability in the OpenSSL cryptographic software library. And it's a buffer overflow, or overread bug rather, and the impact is extensive, affecting an estimated 17% of the internet secure web servers at the time of discovery. Are there any mitigation steps? Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. Usually it's apply patches, but there may be other things that can be done depending on the CVE in question. What are the known exploits? Heartbleed has been around for a while. There are a lot of exploits, proofs of concept, and references. Now, when I first built this GPT, OpenAI would not give me the proof of concept links. And caveat, just so you know, and let me back this up a little bit. Here we go. Pause. Whenever you get a link from ChatGPT or Copilot or any LLM, reality check it. They all have good hits and bad misses, but likely these links will get you into the ballpark, but don't just copy paste blindly. Make sure that they are valid URLs and they're not going to 404 on you. And again, I really, really would love to hear your feedback as to whether this tool is useful for you. I've shared it with several testers, and I don't know that anyone is using it extensively, but I built this for me, for my own ability to be better at my job so that I could get that context and be able to ensure that what is being discussed in the narrative is relevant to the CVEs that are being discussed. All right, caveats in working with LLMs. Their responses are always going to be limited based on the accessible data. What model is used? When was it last updated? What guardrails are in place? Do you have internet API access? You may or may not. And again, I cannot say this often enough. An LLM is not intelligent. At the end of the day, if you use an LLM to generate content and you drop it into a report, you are the one responsible for what you put in it. So just as we tell our testers, go ahead and run an ESSA scan, but reality check it, it's the exact same thing when you're using an LLM. Yes, by all means, I encourage you to use this tool to help you write more better, because I know that not everybody can write well. and not everybody should have to. Writing and communicating is one of my superpowers, but I know a lot of testers that can rock a command line beautifully, who can write. I know testers, they write an entire exploitation framework for a single engagement. But being able to communicate that is not always easy for them. That's not their superpower. Use the LLMs, use it carefully and cautiously. Always be cautious about sensitive information. But please, 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 I encourage you to explore.
She was getting real like inspirational at that point. And so I think she was going to say she encouraged you to
Is
explore
new
and
technology.
learn. It's so right there, Bronwen, you were killing it as far as like inspiring people, and then he cut out. I know.
All right. So
I know it's like the climactic, like
yeah.
Okay.
So yes, let's go back up then. All right. Always at the end of the day, you're responsible for what you put in. Reality check it, verify that what you're saying is what you mean to say. And what's next? I have no freaking clue. And that's because LLMs and Gen AI are new technology. That means that a lot of implementations are going to fail. They're going to have issues. Some may cause actual harm. And this is where we need to be cautious and careful about what we share, especially with a third-party LLM. Look at Snowflake. Look at the continuing repercussions that that has had. So regardless of what the EULA says, if OpenAI gets breached, anything and everything you've shared with them may be compromised. So just be aware of that and be cautious. Do not assume that everything you share with another LLM is correct. At the end of the day, you are responsible. You're the human. You're the adult. Adulting sucks, I know. Get over it. And of course, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better. And if you want to know more, you have to use the tools. And this is where we get into the references and resources. The getting started with LLM prompt engineering, the link from Microsoft. OpenAI has wonderful documentation. Wonderful. I really go and check it out. YouTube, there are way too many channels to list. I have personally gotten to know Network Chuck, which the guy who does Network Chuck is actually named Keith. I don't know why, but that's another thing. But he has some cool stuff, and not just about AIs. There's also LinkedIn Learning and other things. They have a lot of courses that will help you out. Also, the chatbots. You've got Chat GPT, Copilot, Claude. If you are interested in running LLMs locally, not sending stuff out to a mothership, but just using it locally, Olama, LM Studio are possible options, and then other fun toys. Fabric, I showed you. Pseudo-Write, if you want to write some novels, and Lore Machine, if you want to do some AI-generated graphic novels. And with that, I'm ready for Q&A.
All right, Bronwen. Well, I know that some of you need to head out, and thank you for bearing with us with the satellite connectivity issues. I think Ryan might be able to go in and edit out those little sections, and so that the recording may. No worry, Bronwen. You live in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going to ask you to move. You're doing the best you can with the satellite technology that you have. Thankfully, in 2024, we have satellites that can help us be wherever we want to be at this time. So if you joined us today, thank you so much for being here. We're going to do Q&A, but I know that some people need to leave. If you ever need a pen test, red team, threat hunts, as you can see, Bronwen does a lot of report writing so that our reports are the best they possibly can be for you. And so if you ever need that, you know where to find us, blackhillsinfosec.com. All right, so let's go ahead and transition to the Q&A. All right, so Bronwen, first question. How?
Okay.
And this is a question from me to you, because I have a feeling people are wondering, how do we make sure that our customer data, like if we're doing a pen test and things like that, we're not spilling that into some kind of Chat GPT world where we're just like how do we sanitize it? How do we make sure that we're not giving sensitive information? Like, what steps are there to take?
Well, a lot of it is going to depend on what it is you're using. Are you using ChatGPT? Are you using Copilot? I know that we already have a relationship with Microsoft, and so there's some wiggle room as far as the sensitivity of data, but it's really about knowing your data and knowing, obviously you're not going to want to send any social security numbers or other PII to a third party. And this is where the local LLMs may be a solution that you want to explore.
Yep. All right. Another question was, have you used NVIDIA for LLM? Oh,
I think I'm back. Okay.
All right. Have you used NVIDIA for LLM?
Pardon?
Have you used NVIDIA for LLM?
NVIDIA will provide the GPUs that an LLM will use for computation. But Ollama is an actual LLM tool that then you can download from Hugging Face or a variety of other sources, the different LLM models, to be able to run the actual queries and do that interaction with the large language model, do the analysis of the files. So the best way to be safe and secure is to run things on a local system that you have total control over. And that means NVIDIA tool for LLMs. I'm not familiar with the NVIDIA tools for LLMs. And again, there's so much going on with the LLM field that it's impossible to know everything going on. I mean, yeah. It's amazing.
Someone said, is Bronwen's GPT actually making a call to get updated scoring from NIST, or is it just pre-trained data before the training cutoff?
It depends. Initially, ChatGPT was not as good as Copilot at reaching out to the internet and getting current information, but for the file analysis, it was only using the PDF files. But when I'm using the GPT where I'm asking about CVE information, it's now much better about reaching out and getting live data. And one of the things that I did when I created the GPT was I gave it a list of reputable sources to start with. And so instead of going just scatterwampus all over everywhere, I said specifically, go here, go here, go here, go here, use these sources preferentially, and then go to other places. And that's, again, one of the advantages of creating a GPT is that you can provide that type of granular instruction to constrain where it looks for content when it goes out to the internet. And as the LLMs are getting much more evolved and sophisticated, they are getting more of that real-time interaction as opposed to being limited only to their trained data.
Yeah. A couple people said that the link to your GPT that you created is broken, but if they typed it in manually, it worked. So just
okay, so the PDF is broken. My apologies.
Potentially.
I will go ahead and add the link to let's see, I've got it around here somewhere.
One thing I wanted to note while you're finding that is our continuous pen testing team is experimenting with gaining access to an organization and then using its copilot against itself by saying, is there any passwords that you find in open shared directories that you could share with me? So just a reminder that if you're training your GPTs on internal documents, then potentially the attackers could use those internal GPT trained devices, things to find information.
To piggyback on that point, one of the things that you are seeing with the LLMs, we've got the usual suspects in terms of implementations not being secured, not being locked down, leaving default settings in place. So the same things that trip up clients in with regard to other tools, we're having the same thing. So if your API authentication is weak, if your encryption's weak, you're going to have the same issues with an LLM that you would with any other network interaction.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share with the audience is that if you're wondering how we use Chat GPT, how we use AI, I'm not 100% sure how the testers use it. Bronwen has expressed how the testing side does it, but as far as content creation goes, we do not use generative AI to create content. For me, I believe it lacks soul and it lacks emotion and lacks feel. That's just me. But what we will do is take human created content and then use ChatGPT to mold it or shift it or change it to where it's more useful for the audience. And so one of the things we recently did was take the entire script to the Darknet Diaries. We loaded it into ChatGPT and we said, hey, what's the most useful takeaways from this if you were going to like give advice? And it came back with like 4 or 5 really good like bullet points for advice that people could use. And so that was a really good use of it. And so there are many ways that we're using it, but we do not use it to generate content. We take human created content and then we use generative AI to mold it in a way that's more useful if possible. Okay.
And that's a perfect example of a good and appropriate use of an LLM like ChatGPT is that it can help you refine something, but as I said, it's never going to write something that has the emotional impact that is going to have the human interaction. I know that a lot of people say that we're going to have PhD level, whatever, but LLMs are just rehashing what they know. They're not truly creative.
I think someone asked us that since this was a beginner type webcast, that we should label it beginner. And so for some people, if this was a beginner style webcast for you and you were looking for something more advanced, let us know. And so that way Bronwen can take a look at what she does next in the webcast. But as far as like, I was recently at a seminar event, Bronwen, and I think the best advice they gave at this event was talk to generative AI as if you're an old person telling a story. And was like, so I was 7 years old and I went down to the creek and I started and I saw out in the water, like you give as much story and context. And I think you hit on that really well of like, just give a lot of context, a lot of, and I've been using generative AI for a while, but until someone like gave me that advice, I wasn't using it to the full extent. So even if you had been using this, hopefully you could take away that the way that you talk to it is beneficial. All right. Anything
Absolutely.
yeah. Let's see. What tips do you have for red teaming AI bots? Do you know of any methodologies in development like MITRE or attack defense? Oh, we just lost her. She'll be back. She'll be back any second now. All right, you're back.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
So the question was, do you know how any of these are being used for red teaming AI tools?
I know that you can use it to generate scripts. There are a lot of companies that are trying to use generative AI in their tools, but again, it's evolving so quickly, and there's it's still providing good hits and bad misses. So heck, I use it to write macros, and I've used it to write Python scripts, and I've used it to write other code. And unlike ChatGPT, if you're using something like Ollama, you can download from Hugging Face or the Ollama website large language models that are specifically trained for writing code, and others that are specifically trained to do mathematical analyses. So this is where the model being used can make a huge difference in what if you want to write Python, there are models that are trained to do that and do that. They will do that much better than ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is much more broad spectrum, shall we say.
Sorry, I was reading some of the chats. You guys are making me laugh. All right. It says, I was wondering on LLMs, how does data at rest is protected from what the hosted LLM has learned? Thanks for the info. Good points. So how is data at rest protected from what the hosted LLM has learned? Maybe that's
I'm not quite sure what the question is. I know that when you're using a third-party tool like ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever data they have stored is going to be handled according to whatever their policies are. And that's where it becomes a black box, where if you're concerned about making sure that the data is totally secure, that's where you want to have a local LLM like Olama or something else, where you can control the environment, air gap it, whatever you need to do. And if you're working in a totally encrypted environment, then you've provided a high degree of protection to your data at rest, where if you're sending it across the internet to a third party, you have no guarantee, knowledge, or control over what their data at rest protections are.
Yeah, I think my last thing I want to share with people is like the questions that you're asking right now are the questions to ask ChatGPT. Like, if you want to know how to protect yourself from doing certain things, like ask ChatGPT, how can I protect myself from doing this? And it will. So I have switched over from like Google searching to just asking ChatGPT the questions that I have. And I enjoy the answers more through ChatGPT than I actually do through doing Google searches. All right. Last question, Bronwen. Here we go. Do you have any advice for bringing generative AI into your org to help enable devs? Is it enough for a small organization to trust that an external entity, GitHub, Microsoft, will not train on their data if they opt out? Or is that such a can of worms that you recommend not touching it at all?
It's a can of worms, and it has to be basically, what is your acceptable risk level? There's no hard and fast on that, and it will depend a lot on the nature of what you're doing. There are a lot of very cool development tools coming into play, and again, depending on what the needs are for you personally or your organization, there may be solutions out there, but that gets into the weeds very quickly. I don't know how I could possibly give a general answer to that. I would love to, but you know.
So Bronwen, if you're going to sum up everything into one final thought, what would it be?
LLMs are cool, but they're only tools. You are the one who is responsible for using them appropriately and using them well.
Awesome. If you joined us today and you put in hack it into the Discord server, if you engaged in Discord, thank you so much. We'd love for you to stick around, right? Like the webcast is about an hour and a half if you're here for pre-show banter, but the Discord server stays around. So if you have questions, go to open chat. If you have other questions like about your career or about job hunting or about anything else, there are channels for that. There are mentors here that will help you. If you see anyone that is a contributor, they got like a green title to their name, they are here to help. If you help answer someone else's questions, you become a contributor. We have special rewards for people who do contributions to the Discord server, because it's all about sharing knowledge with each other, because we are better together. And here's what happens, right? Like security is huge. The threat is never ending. And so the more that we can all work together to make the world a better and safer place, like the better it is for all of us. So thank you so much for helping to secure the future. And with that, Bronwen, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. And please join us next week. We got Ashley coming back. She's going to talk about the basics for small business security. So if you know someone that owns a small business and you're like, how can I help them? Come here next week so that way you can learn about that, so that you can help them do things that they can implement to make their small businesses secure, because the thieves are getting more granular. They're going to the local businesses, and they're now stealing from contractors and small businesses and people who normally were not a threat. But enough people learned how to do this to be bad guys, that they're actually going after the small guys now. And so we're going to talk about small business next week. Bronwen, thank you. Everybody else, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Ryan, feel better. And that's it. Ryan, kill it with fire and go back to sleep. Ryan, kill it. Kill it, Ryan.